students, my name is Niyati Said and thanks for watching Wikipedia word videos. My topic for the presentation is the 7th section of the chapter Movement and Locomotion. In this section of presentation, we'll be studying about the joints present in the human body. A need for strength makes the bones rigid. But if the skeleton consisted of only one solid bone, movement would be impossible. But the nature has solved this problem by dividing the skeleton into many bones and creating joints, okay, where the bones intersect. These red ones are your joints. Joints are also known as articulations. They are strong connections that joins the bones, the teeth, and the cartilage of the body to one another. Each joint is specialized in its shape and structural component to control the range of motion between the parts that it connects. Okay? So, the joints may be classified functionally based upon how much movement they allow. So they are of three types. Which are those? First is your fibrous. Fibrous are the immovable joint. This is fibrous. Then comes the cartilaginous. They are slightly movable. Okay. And then comes the synovial joints. That means they are freely moving joints. Okay. So a joint that permits no movement is known as Sino Arthrosis. The sutures of the skull and connect the teeth to the skull are the example of this joint. Okay. And second functional class is your cartilaginous, in which they are freely movable and they have the highest range of motion in any joint, and they include elbow, knee, shoulder and wrist. This is an example of this category. So they are synovial. And second category is your cartilaginous. They are slightly movable. Okay. This is the part moving joints. This allows a slight amount of movement at a joint. Okay. Example of this include intervertebral disc of the spine and the pubic symphysis of the hips. Okay. Now, joints may also be classified structurally based upon what kind of material is present in the joint. Okay. So they are of three types: fibrous, cartilaginous and synovial. In fibrous joints, they are made up of tough collagen fibers and they include the sutures of the skull. And then comes cartilaginous, or they are also called as slightly movable joints, and they are made up of band of cartilage that binds bone together. And some examples of the cartilaginous joints include joint between ribs, okay, ribs and costal cartilage. And this cartilaginous joints, they are found in the intervertebral disc of the spine too. And then comes synovial. Synovial is a freely movable joint, and it is the most common type of the joint which is found in the human body. Okay. And it is seen that in the synovial joints, something surrounds the joint is a capsule of a tough, dense, irregular connective tissue that lined with the synovial membrane. So, synovial membrane, it lines the capsule, produces a oily synovial fluid that lubricates the joint and it reduces friction and wear. And that's why, because they are most common type of joint and they are found in your limbs. Okay, so this is the most common type of joint, and so there should be a lubricant that reduces friction and the wear. Okay. Now comes fibrous joints. Fibrous joints, they do not allow any movement. This type of joint is shown by the flat skull. Okay, see, this is the zoom view of the skull. These are the sutures. Okay, these are the sutures. Okay, so fibrous joints, they do not allow any movement. This type of joint is shown by the flat skull bones, which fuse end to end with the help of dense fibrous connective tissue in the form of sutures. That means in the sutures they have fibrous connective tissue that joins end to end. Okay, and that doesn't allow any movement. Okay, and this forms the cranium. Fibrous joint, they form the cranium. Okay, and for example, sutures between flat skull bone is the example of the fibrous joints. Okay, now comes your cartilaginous joints. Cartilaginous joints occur where the connection between articulating bone is made up of cartilage, for example, between vertebrae in the spine. See, these are the vertebrae of the spine, okay, and these are the intercalated disc of the vertebrae, right? From 1 to 7 they are cervical vertebrae. From 8 to 12, they are 12 in number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so they are thoracic vertebrae, and lumbar are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 are in number. And then comes sacrum and coccyx. Sacrum, they fuse into one, okay, and coccyx is the tailbone. So these cartilaginous joints, they occur where the connection between articulating bone is made up of cartilage, for example, between the vertebrae in the spine. Okay, then comes synovial joints. Synovial joints are far by most common classification of joint within the human body, and they are highly movable and all have the synovial capsule. This is synovial capsule. Okay, this is the synovial. This light green part is your synovial fluid, and this is your synovial capsule. Okay, this is synovial capsule layer, and this is the socket. Okay, and this is your synovial fluid. Okay, so synovial joints are by far most common classification of joint within the human body, and they are highly movable and all have a synovial capsule that surrounds the entire joint. A synovial membrane is also there which secretes synovial fluid. This is synovial fluid, the light green in color. Okay, this synovial fluid is a lubricating fluid. Cartilage known as hyaline cartilage, which pads the end of the articulating bone. These two are the articulating bones, right? This is the articular lip of first bone, and this is another articulating bone. So there is a hyaline cartilage that pads the end of the articulating bone. And there are 6 types of synovial joints which are classified by the shape of the joint and the movement available. So they, on the basis of that, they are categorized into 6 categories. First is your hinge joint, second is your pivot joint, third is your ball and socket joint, and fourth is your saddle joint, fifth is your condyloid bone, and sixth is your gliding joint. Okay, we'll be studying in detail. So these are the synovial joints. Okay, first is your ball and socket joint. Ball and socket joint, movement of joint is flexion, okay, abduction and extension. Okay, so and this type is found in shoulder joint and the hip joint. See, this is the shoulder joint. The blue color representation is the ball and the socket joint, and this is again hip joint, which is ball and socket. in nature. And then comes hinge joint. Hinge joint is a, you can say that it is a knee joint. Okay, it is a knee joint. And the elbow joint. Okay, see, this is hinge joint, knee joint. Okay, fingers, blue color representation are all hinge joints. Elbow, phalanges, wrist bone, knee joints, toe joint, ankle joint. So they are the examples of the hinge joint. Okay, then comes pivot joint. It is between atlas and the axis. Okay, it is between atlas and axis. This is rotation of one bone around the other takes place. See, rotation of one bone around the other takes place. Example is your neck and elbow. Okay, then comes gliding joint. Gliding joint is the one in which the gliding movement used to take place, or it takes place. So it is between carpals. Okay, intercarpal joints. See, this is the carpal joint. Okay, now saddle joint. Saddle joint, it takes place between carpal and the metacarpal of a thumb. See, this is carpal, this is the carpal, and this is the metacarpal. Okay, so saddle joint takes place, or it is a joint between carpal and the metacarpal of a thumb. Now comes fibrous joints. Fibrous joints in which no movement takes place. When no movement occurs between the bones concerned, the joint is described as fibrous or fixed or immovable. Okay, the bones, they are held in place by fibrous connective tissue, and it is very difficult to damage this type of joint. And this type of joint is shown by the flat skull bones, which fuse end to end with the help of dense fibrous connective tissue in the form of sutures to form the cranium, that is brain box. Okay, these are the sutures that are connected end to end, and in between it is filled fibrous connective tissue. See, this is a dense fibrous connective tissue which is filled inside sutures. Okay, this is the zoom view of sutures, or the cranium, or the flat bones. Okay, and that forms the cranium. Now comes cartilaginous joints. The bones involved are joined together with the help of cartilage, because as the name suggests, cartilaginous joint, that means cartilage is there to connect. Okay, the joint between adjacent vertebrae in the vertebral column is of this pattern, and it permits limited movement. Okay, so they are held in place by cartilage, which allows slight movement to occur. For example, it includes the junction at two pelvic bones, the joint between the ribs and the sternum. Okay, that means only the slight movement takes place, be it a joint between an adjacent vertebrae of the spine, okay, or that permits very limited movement. Okay, now this is cartilaginous joint. The blue, sky blue color are your cartilaginous joints. Okay, see, this is the intercalated disc which is present in the spine between the two vertebrae. Okay, and this is the pubic symphysis. Now comes synovial joints. They are characterized by the presence of fluid filled synovial cavity between the articulating surface of two bones. That means a junction where two bones meet. Okay, that is known as articulating surface of two bones. Such an arrangement allows considerable movement. Okay, so the amount of movement possible is limited by ligaments, muscles, tendons, and adjoining bones. These joints, they are also known as synovial joints, and they occur at the shoulder, elbow, wrist, finger, hip, knee, ankle, and toes. Okay, and these movements, they help in locomotion and many other movements. There are 6 categories that are found in the synovial joint are as follows. First is your ball and socket joint. Second is your hinge joint. Third is your pivot joint. Fourth is your gliding joint. Fifth is your saddle joint. And sixth is your gliding one. Okay. So this is the example of synovial. This is a joint cavity that helps in the articulation of 2 bones. This is one bone and this is second bone, and this is known as synovium, and here synovial fluid is filled. Okay, and this is the joint cavity. This is the capsular ligament. Now, types of the synovial joint, as I have told you, that they are 6 in number. So first is your ball and socket. Okay, ball and socket, it is found between humerus and the pectoral girdle. Pectoral girdle means the shoulder joint. And then comes your saddle joint. Saddle joint, it is between carpal and the metacarpal of the thumb. Okay, and then third is your condyloid, which is condyloid is again a category of the synovial joint. And then comes your gliding joint. Gliding joint is the one between the carpals of the fingers. Okay, and then comes hinge joint. Hinge joint, they are also known as knee joint. See, this is the knee joint. Okay, be it in the leg or be in the forelimb. Okay, and then comes pivot. Pivot is between atlas and the axis. See, this is the axis and this is the atlas, so it is between it is found in the neck portion. Okay, so these are the 6 synovial joint types. Ball and socket joint, as I have told you, that this is a joint between humerus and the pectoral. Humerus is a bone of your arm, and pectoral girdle is your shoulder joint. So this joint, it forms when a spherical end of one bone fits in a cup-like cavity of another. That means it fits into the depression in the scapula. Scapula is a shoulder. Okay, so the head of the humerus is the bone which is found in the forearm. It fits in the depression in the scapula, that is your shoulder bone. The head of the femur articulates with the pelvis. See, this is the depression which is found in the scapula, which is shoulder, and this is your humerus head. Humerus is the arm bone, and this is the head of the humerus that articulates in the depression of the scapula. Okay, so this is your ball and socket. Now comes hinge joint. This joint allows movement in one place only. They form when a convex surface of one bone fits in the concave surface of the other. Okay, that means convex and concave should be there to form a hinge joint. Okay, and this is found in elbow and the knee. Second, it also occurs at the ankle and it between the bones of the finger. Okay, so this is your hinge joint. This is your humerus, the bone of the arm. Okay, this is your ulna and radius. This is your radius. Okay, and this is your ulna. So, and this is how the, see, this is the concave and this is the convex, so they both fit into each other and they form such kind of hinge joint. And then comes pivot joint. It is between atlas and the axis. That means it is found in the neck part, and this type of joint, they are formed when rounded, pointed or conical end of one bone articulates with a ring formed partly by bone and partly by the ligament. The first vertebrae of the spine on which head is balanced, that is known as atlas. and the second vertebrae is known as axis. So this is a joint between first vertebrae and the second vertebrae. First vertebrae is known as atlas and second vertebrae is known as axis, and this allows the head to rotate. Okay. See, this is how it works. This is the, suppose this is the first, suppose this is the atlas and this is the axis, and on which the rotation of the neck takes place. Okay. Now comes gliding joint. Gliding joint is between the carpals, okay, and carpals of the fingers. It allows movement in any direction in side to side or back and forth motion. Okay, and they are joined between carpal bones, tarsal bones, sternum, that is breast bones, and clavicle. Okay, so this is how the representation of see, this is your gliding movement, how gliding takes place between carpals or the tarsals. Okay, and then comes saddle joint. Saddle joint, it is between carpal and the metacarpal of thumb. So the two bones forming the joint, they are saddle shaped, that is concave in one direction and convex in the other. Okay, they fit together in a such a way that they allow side to side and back and forth movements. See, this is how it works. This is the concave and this is the convex on which the movement takes place. Okay, so this is your saddle, and then comes your condyloid joints. They have one surface of the bone slightly concave depression in another bone. That means it has a depression in the concave structure, and such joints, they occur between radius and the carpal bone, the metacarpal bone, and the phalanges of the toes, and they allow movement in two directions, such as side to side, up and down, side to side, and up to down. Okay, so this is condyloid joint. This is the condyloid joint which is found here, and this is how the concave depression is there in which the articulation or the movement takes place. Okay, now the types of the movement at a joint, there are 5 types of the joints movement takes place. First is your flexion. Flexion means bending. It usually decreases the angle of the articulating bone and it bends the knee or the elbow. Okay, flexion means bending. And then comes extension. Extension means strengthening. Strengthening means the increasing the angle. It is just opposite of the flexion, in which we decrease the angle. In this, we increase the angle of articulating bone. Articulating bone means moving bones, and it helps in the strengthening the arm or the leg after flexion. Okay, after bending, extension takes place, which helps in the strengthening of the arm. Then comes abduction, which is movement away from the midline body. Okay, that means we lift the arm upward and away from the body. That means we are moving away from the midline of our body. Suppose there is a midline in our body from head to foot. So when we are lifting the arm upward or away from the body, that means abduction type of movement is taking place in the joints. Okay, now adduction is a movement that towards from the midline. That means you have moved your arm away from the midline, and now you are moving your arm towards the midline of the body. That means you are returning the arm after abduction. That is this one. Okay, and then comes the rotation, which is the movement of a bone around its long axis. So these were the 5 types of the movement that take place at a joint. Okay, so this was all about the 7th section, in which we have studied joints found in the human body. In my next section of the presentation, we'll be studying about the disorders of muscular and skeletal system, in which we'll study myasthenia gravis, muscular dystrophy, arthritis, osteoporosis, gout, and tetany. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching Edupedia word videos.